Oh, hello. My name is Mara, and welcome to Books Like Whoa. Okay, so 2019 reading is well underway at this point. We are at the end of January. Now, I'm filming this on the last day of January, and I think I probably will finish at least one more book today, but if it's important enough, I will include it in February's wrap-up. But yeah, when I checked in with you guys in the middle of the month, I was kind of talking about how I'd read a lot of just sort of meh books and hadn't had that many hits, but things definitely picked up after that. So I think I had a good mix of kind of some disappointments, but a lot of things that I really enjoyed, or at least things that surprised me. Let's get into some stats, and then we'll talk about my hits, my surprises, my disappointments, and a new thing that I'll start talking about, which is how I did on any challenges that I have set myself that I've told you guys about. So yeah, let's dive in. So in terms of stats so far this year, I have read 18 books to date. Like I said, might end up being 19, and I just realized I wasn't counting any of the literally probably dozen little short story things I read on Kindle Unlimited because I had a month of it for free because I got a new Kindle, so I didn't count any of those. But anyway, 18 books, and those books on average were about 5 years old. That was like the average age, which is great. My goal is to make that 10, but baby steps, progress. They were on my TBR for an average of about 115 days, so like 4-ish months, which is pretty darn good. In terms of the source, as you can see, most of them came from my physical TBR or from my ebook TBR. I did read some E-No-Owns, that's the E-N-O. Those are usually ones from the library, basically, or from Kindle Unlimited. A few audio as well. In terms of genre spread, I read several romances, I read 3 memoirs, I read some general fiction, I read some nonfiction. So yeah, pretty good spread overall. The only thing that's not really reflected on here is I did get through 3 Mission Marple rereads in January. So that means that I read 3 mysteries that are not counted in this because I only count my new reads, not my rereads. But yeah, overall a pretty good genre spread. In terms of my rating, my average rating was a 3.5, which is kind of like a B+-ish type rating, so that's pretty darn good, and as you can see, had a good distribution. Really, I think my lowest rating was only, 2.5, so I had a lot of 3s, which brought things down, but I also had some 4s and some 4.5s, so overall, a pretty good reading month. I think if my average is 3 or higher, I consider it a good reading month, so 3.5, pretty darn solid. With all that being said, let's get into, let's start with my disappointments because I think I have the least to say about that. So in terms of disappointments, I read 3 memoirs this month, and all 3 of them were disappointments, and I think I mostly talked about that in my mid-month wrap-up. I talked about Thick by Tressie, McMillan, Cottam. Not bad, just tonally didn't hit me the way I was hoping it would. I expected that to be a 4 or 4.5 read, so that's why it was a disappointment, but 3 stars on that. I'd say the worst book I read this month that wasn't just sort of like a light romancy type thing was The Elephant in the Room by Tomlinson. Again, 3 stars, not terrible, just like not insightful enough. Another one that I read later in the month was How to Date Men When You Hate Men by Blythe Roberson. And while it wasn't bad, I definitely, it was a 3-star again. I really liked the idea and I liked her introduction, but as a memoir, it just wasn't very, very memorable or compelling to me. I just thought it was okay in terms of personal essays. I wasn't that impressed with it, is what it boils down to, so that's why it was a disappointment. The other thing I would probably consider to be a disappointment was Housekeeping by Marilynne Robinson. Now this was 3 stars, so again, not terrible, but Gilead is a 5-star read for me. It's one of my all-time favorite books, and this just didn't connect with me in the same way, so insofar as my expectations were not met, it was disappointing. So I talked more about that again in my mid-month check-in, but yeah, this was disappointing to me. Okay, transitioning into surprises. First, I would say In an Absent Dream. Repeating myself, I did talk about this in my mid-month check-in, kind of more details in my thoughts. I guess I would just sum it up by saying that I think that this book kind of let me know that I need to think more about which books in the Wayward Children series I get, because I think when the books don't have either a character that I remember and really liked from previous books, because this Lundy, as somebody pointed out to me, she does appear at the boarding school in the earlier books as the therapist who is aging backwards. I forgot about her, so I wasn't very invested in her character for whatever that means. And this book was very parable-like, even more so tonally than I think the other Wayward Children series books have been. And I just don't think that that quite worked for me. I think I'm just in a state of sort of like needing to figure out where I stand with that series. I think if the next book is Cade's book, which I'm really hoping it is, I think I've heard somebody say that it might be, then I think that that will be a good way for me to sort of like read that and see how that one is working for me, because I've been so excited for Cade's book. And that'll kind of let me know where I stand with the series as a whole. But for now, I think I'm just surprised because I'm sort of like in an in-between place. The fantasy world in this was awesome, but this book just didn't quite come together for me in terms of what I want from this series. That seemed really incoherent. I apologize if none of that made sense, but I'm in sort of a surprise, like, I'm not quite sure what to do with this book. Another surprise, and I think this has been each volume of this has been in my surprise category the last few months, is the third volume of Monstrous, which is Haven. And now that I'm caught up with it, I did a review, which I think you guys will be seeing on Friday, of sort of where I'm at with the first 3 volumes of this. I guess I'll just say that what I really like about this book is that I don't really know where the series is going. Like, I couldn't really tell you, like, what the macro plot of this is. I'm still trying to understand the world, and I'm still trying to understand, like, who's who in this world, and like who the players are, and like what's going on really, but it's all in a way that I really enjoy. Like, this world is so interesting to me. Like, I feel like every book I find out some huge new piece of like the world building that always intrigues me. And I really like where it's going in terms of just every volume. I continue to be sort of disoriented in a way that I really like. I think I've talked about this on this channel quite a bit. When an author can leave me disoriented in a way that feels purposeful and like they know where they're going, even if I don't, that's one of my favorite feelings to have while reading a book. So yeah, I'm really, really excited to continue with the series. And like I said, I did a review of the first 3 volumes and sort of like my impressions of it, so you can see that on Friday. But yeah, I'm surprised and delighted continually by this particular series. And then my third surprise is The Wolf and the Whale by Jordanna Max Brodsky. This is a book, I think it just came out last week. I think it came out on the 29th of January. This is an Inuit Viking high fantasy with romance. Like, I would call this a fantasy romance, probably. Like, it's kind of in between. This book reminded me a lot of Phoenix Unbound by Grace Draven, just in terms of like tonally and what it was trying to do, which I liked. I mean, that's a high compliment because I really like Grace Draven. This book has some pretty significant pacing issues to it in terms of things going really, really slow and then really, really fast, and like I think that it just was kind of uneven, and I when I was looking through some of the reviews, that seemed to be the most common thing that people are like, I just can't deal with this. This book also needs all of the content warnings. There's some extremely disturbing graphic stuff around like sexual violence and just violence in general, so like keep that in mind. Also, the author is not afraid to just like fuck with your emotions. Things will get real, okay? That's basically what I need to say about this book. But that being said, I just really enjoyed the uniqueness of the world for me. I'm sure that there are other fantasy novels that are dealing with like Inuit culture or Viking lore and like meshing them together. I'm sure that that exists, but I've never read something quite like that before. So I really enjoyed just the world building and the magic system and kind of like how it deals with the gods in these various cultures. I really enjoyed that. I thought the action stuff was handled really well. Again, sometimes pacing is off. It gets drawn out a lot, I think, especially towards the end, but I still really enjoyed it. I really liked the characters, so I was very invested in them. And I was particularly surprised and delighted by the main character. So Omat is our main character, and I'm going to call her because that's the pronouns that the book uses, but she is born, let's say, physically female, but she is raised to be, like, they believe that her father's spirit has, like, inhabited her. So she's being raised to be the shaman, and she's sort of raised as a boy. And this book is a lot about her, like, navigating her gender identity and having kind of a non-binary gender identity and making peace with, like, the female part of her as well as the male, and, like, being both. I don't know, it just was like fascinating, and I didn't realize that was the kind of where her character development was going to be, and I just thought it was really interesting. Now, I'm not non-binary, so I can't speak to how well that is done, but I thought it was interesting and delicately handled from my perspective. Do with that what you will, but I just thought that was a super cool element to include, and something that I haven't really seen before in a book like this. So all around, just surprising. I don't think that this is a book for everyone, but I personally really enjoyed it. And I think, again, just know that it's long and the pacing is very uneven, and know that it has some very like extreme content warnings it needs. But if you can get down with that, I think that this is something I would definitely recommend in terms of like a fantasy romance type bridging book for people who like fantasy and would be interested in reading something that has kind of some romance elements thrown into it as well. Okay, and then I have 4 big hits for the month. So let's start with the 4-star ones. So first off, Luna and the Lie by Mariana Zapata. So this was a book she released right at the end of 2018, and it is her latest contemporary romance. She is known for her slow burn, which I absolutely love. Like, her books are usually like 500 pages. She's an indie author, and she's not edited, therefore, in the traditional publishing style, which I actually think is really good because she has a very particular flavor of her writing that makes it very crackalicious. Now it also means though that it will not work for everyone. So some people read her and are like, I cannot deal with this. For me, it always pulls me in. I'm always very invested. She always has a lot of like family and professional things happening for her heroines, in terms of like they have struggles that are not just about them getting together with whatever guy they're slowly dancing around, and this book is no different. I really liked all of that, but what made this book a real hit for me, and something that I initially gave it a 4.5 star, and then when I sat with it I was like, no, it's really more of a 4 star. But the thing that I loved is it has one of the best grovels I've ever seen in a contemporary romance, because something that drives me crazy in romances is that there is usually some sort of like conflict towards the last third of a romance that like poses some danger to the couple being able to stay together. I tend to prefer ones of those that are external conflicts as opposed to internal conflicts, but whenever it is an internal conflict or one of them does something to the other person, so rarely do I feel like the author fully addresses the implications of what has been done. Because sometimes it's like kind of a miscommunication, or it's like, hey, you know, we were both wrong and like we'd rather just forgive each other and be together than hold on to this grudge or whatever. But often it's like a really serious breach of trust that happens, and the author just acts like, oh, they just needed to sit on it for a week and then they'll get over it. And it's like, no, like this is a serious violation of trust. These two people are going to like be happily ever after and just going to be together forever. Like, you need to like address that there was some real trust broken here and it needs to be rebuilt. And this has one of the best grovels that reestablishes trust that I have ever seen. I just appreciated, and it wasn't even like what the conflict that happens. I mean, it was serious, but it wasn't even like the most serious violation of trust or violation of sort of the term of the relationship I've seen in a romance, but like it was serious enough that it needed to be addressed, and like it doesn't just get resolved overnight. Like, it takes time and like very clear communication of like, here's what hurt me, and here's you acknowledging that you hurt me and really understanding it, and like convincing me and like demonstrating that you understand and are not going to do that again. And I like appreciated that and was like, thank you. So by the time the slow burn starts to actually burn, I'm like, cool, I believe that you guys have worked through a major problem and that you now are on the same page and are going to be able to like try to move forward in the future. So that was why I initially gave it a 4.5 star. When I thought about it, I realized that there were other parts of the book that I think were a little flabby and a little off and just not her very, very best. But overall, I really enjoyed it, so that was definitely a hit for me this month. Another definite hit for me this month was The Poppy War by RF Kuang. So this is one where I had started it and was really enjoying it and basically just got distracted and kind of lost track of it a little bit. So I came back, and I had originally read, I think, about 70 or 100 pages. And the first part of this book is like magical boarding school set in like silk punk, like Asian inspired fantasy. And then there's a boarding school, and we're following this girl who passes this really hard test and gets to go to this academy, this like military academy. And the first half of this book really is kind of like your typical fantasy boarding school, which I love. I mean, like, that's one of my favorite things to see. Then there is a huge tonal shift and huge pacing shift when a war breaks out, and that is like the rest of the book. And some people just like could not get down with that change in pace, which I think is very fair because it is a huge change in the middle of a book. So I think that it's fair if you're like, hey, I started off on this one trajectory with the book that I was really enjoying, and then you just sort of like skirt in a different way. I loved both halves of this. I am so excited for the next one. I do think pacing wise, because there is a huge shift and because just, I think the second half of the book just lags a little bit. Like, I think it gets a little choppy in terms of the writing. So I ended up giving this a 4-star because of that. But I love this as a like expression or like a metaphor for female rage. That is what this book is about. This book is about sublimated female anger. Also, this book is brutal. It's definitely grimdark. Not the grimmest, darkest I've seen. The Wolf and the Whale is more hardcore than this, if you've read this and you want something to compare The Wolf and the Whale to. Wolf and the Whale is more hardcore. But this is pretty damn dark, and I love that. I love, like, the exploration and metaphor around female anger with her powers and, like, the god that she is thinking about serving. All of it I loved in terms of, like, what it was saying on a metaphorical level. I really liked the characters. I really like our main character. What's her name? I always forget the main characters' names. Ren. Ren is great. I love all the side supporting characters with her. Like, it is so good, at least for me. It really, really worked for me. I'm very excited to see what happens in the next one. And also, I just think that, like, this is basically kind of, this particular book is based around a historical event known as the Rape of Nanking. And I also just like that this is, like, reminding people that that horrible thing happened and that, like, as disturbing as this is, it is based on a real event. So do with that what you will. But anyway, I really enjoyed this. I did give it 4 stars, but yeah, really excited to continue with this series. Okay, and then my 2 4.5 ones. First is Trail of Lightning by Rebecca Roanhorse. I talked about both of these books quite a bit in my live stream I did, and that's like right at the beginning of that. So even if you don't want to watch the full 2 hours of it, you could watch like the first 15 minutes of that and you'd get like more details about my thoughts on both of these 2 4.5s I'm going to be talking about. So I'll just say for this is dark urban fantasy and I love it. I am so excited. I think that this has so much promise for a series. I cannot wait for the next one. It reminds me a lot of Kate Daniels in terms of what I like about Kate Daniels, though I will say it is darker and Kate Daniels is funnier. Like, Kate is so just like internally snarky and sarcastic that is a lot of what the experience of reading that book is kind of getting her humorous take on things. This doesn't have that, so if that's what you like about Kate Daniels, this isn't a 1-to-1 read. But in terms of like post-apocalyptic, dark, I love that it's sort of paced like Mad Max Fury Road. I love that it's post-apocalyptic and the magic system that we're dealing with is based on Navajo kind of traditions, which I think is really cool. Its own voices, which is great. All around, I'm way into this. I cannot wait to keep reading in it. Again, female anger. My like theme, because also I've noticed in Miss Marple, female rage, that seems to be my theme of the month, is I'm liking books that like the metaphor happening is female anger. The other 4.5 I had is Bad Blood by John Carreyrou. This is investigative journalism done the way I like it in terms of narrative nonfiction. It's about the rise and fall of a technology, but really a healthcare company called Theranos. It's about toxic work environments and hubris and investors and the bullshit of corporate life in a lot of ways. If you've ever been around like corporate things, you know that there's just a lot of like posturing and bullshit in it. This like cuts through a lot of that. Oh, it's just super good, guys. I really enjoyed this. I listened to this as audio originally and I would definitely recommend that. Highly recommend. I think I mentioned on the live stream, this has something like 30 or 40,000 reviews on Goodreads and it still has like a 4.5 rating, which is pretty impressive. So definitely would recommend this one. I think that will do it for my January 2019 reading wrap up. Oh, no, I wanted to do something else. Sorry, I forgot. I wanted to, at the end of every month, also talk to you guys about how I'm doing on my challenges. So I picked a book from the jar for my 19 books that I want to read in 2019. So I made progress on that list of 19 because I read Trail of Lightning, which was on that list. And then the thing I picked out was Dare We Hope All Men Be Saved by Hans Urs von Balthasar. 4 stars. I enjoyed this. I think that it's an interesting skirting of trying to have a non-heterodox take on Christian universalism. I thought that was a very interesting kind of project that he undertook, and I really enjoyed it. So 4 stars on that, 4.5 on this. So far doing pretty darn good on my reading for that TBR. I also, as I mentioned, read 3 installments in the Marple canon because I'm doing Mission Marple right now. All 3 of them were rereads for me. So I read The Murder at the Vicarage, which was 5 stars, The 13 Problems, which was 4.5 stars, and The Body in the Library, which was, oh, well, you guys haven't seen that video yet, so you'll find out. But I did reread those 3. I also read Housekeeping, which was in my list of modern classics that I wanted to get to in my 12 classics I want to read this year. 3 stars on this, like we talked about, so not my favorite. And then I am in the middle of 2 J.D. Robb books, 2 In Death books. I expect that I'm going to finish Memory in Death today. So I wanted to read 2 this month, but that didn't quite happen. So in February, I may try to do a little catch up. So that's the recap of how I'm doing on all of my TBR stuff too. Okay, so I think that does it for January wrap up then, now that I've added that last little segment. So just a reminder, I'm probably not going to be as accessible in February just because I'm doing a move. I've done a ton of pre-filming, so I don't think that I'm going to miss an upload. If I do, just know that is why. I may not be able to be as responsive. We'll see how things progress. But, hopefully I will still be able to keep in touch with you guys. And I definitely, like I said, don't think I'm going to miss an upload. So that's the most important thing to me. But anyway, I think that will do it. So if you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, follow me on the social medias if you are so inclined. I have all that information listed in the description box below. And I think that will do it. I hope you guys are having a really lovely day, and I will just talk to you soon. Bye!